In honor of Juneteenth, which was this past Thursday, we have a special guest speaker today, our very own Harper Pierce. And to introduce Harper, I will call up Judd Pierce from the Racial Justice Education Committee.
Shabbat Shalom. Well, this is a very proud parent moment, so please indulge me a few minutes here to introduce our speaker for today, Harper Pierce. Harper is a recent graduate of Gann Academy. She spent the last few years diving deep into questions of justice, identity, and Jewish values, while also surviving high school. All know is an accomplishment in and of itself. She just returned from a 4-week trip to Israel with her classmates, where she had the chance to connect even more deeply with her Jewish heritage, her community, and yes, also with hummus at every meal. This summer, she'll be working at the JCC summer camp, passing along her passion for learning, fun, and maybe even a little justice for the next generation. And in the fall, she'll be starting her freshman year at the University of Richmond, where I expect she'll continue to make us proud and hopefully call home once in a while. Harper's been thinking about issues of racial justice for a long time. One of the first books she truly loved was The Hate U Give. And I'll never forget that the night we went to hear Angie Thomas speak in Cambridge. See it? After oh, I'm a little nervous here. After she spoke, Harper stood in line, clutching her copy, and she met with Ms. Thomas and got her book signed. And she had this beaming smile, pure joy. That book, like so many since, have helped to shape the way she sees the world. And yes, we named her Harper partly for Harper Lee, because we hope she'd grow up to care about fairness, courage, and doing what's right, even when it's hard. So far, so good. Many of you know Harper from our 1619 project book discussion group here at Temple Emunah. We still have 3 sessions to go, and she's anchored a lot of these conversations with her knowledge, her insight, and her thoughtful questions. So when the Racial Justice Education Committee was thinking about who could speak to our community about Juneteenth and why we as Jews should care about racial justice, we knew we had the perfect person. Please join me in welcoming my daughter and one of my greatest teachers, Harper Pierce.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you to the Racial Justice Committee for giving me the platform to speak today. Juneteenth, I think, is a vital day in American civic engagement and reminder of the unfinished work that is equity for Black Americans. So Juneteenth, which we observed this past Thursday, commemorates June 19th, 1865, which was the day that Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, to liberate and enforce the emancipation of enslaved Black Americans more than 2 years following Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. In 2021, former President Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law, which officially codified the day as a nationally observed holiday. I'm here today to talk with you not as a congregation solely of Jews, rather as a community of moral witnesses and inheritors of a tradition that demands we show up in the face of injustice. Jewish communities across the United States have been advocating for our Black brothers and sisters since at least the early 20th century, with especially notable solidarity during the Civil Rights Movement. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who we all know and love, famously marched arm in arm with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Selma, declaring he was praying with his feet by marching. Jewish lawyers helped fund and found the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund, and Jewish college students were among those who joined in Freedom Summer in 1964 to register Black voters in the South. some of them even losing their lives in the process, such as Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner. More recently, synagogues and Jewish organizations have joined in Black Lives Matter protests, supported bail funds, and hosted conversations about racial justice, such as what we are here for today. To me, Juneteenth is a day that serves as a reminder of why we have an obligation as Jews to advocate for our other marginalized communities. In my 10th grade Jewish history class, my teacher brought up a vital question in our curriculum. What do you see yourself as? A Jewish American or an American Jew? I grappled with this question for a while, trying to force myself to see a difference between the two. I didn't think that there was one, but even if it did exist, I was unable to convince myself that it mattered. This question continued to pop up throughout my studies at Gann, in AP US history when we studied waves of Jewish immigration in the early 20th century, in AP English literature when we questioned the great American novel and whether or not it could be written by a Jew. Through topics such as these, the capital Q question that we had been dealt in Jewish history began to make sense. In the landscape of our identities, which took precedence? Being Jewish or being American? I'd like you to ask yourself that now, and then imagine how a bunch of 16-year-olds felt trying to struggle with it. And I'd say, take your level of confusion and multiply it by at least 10, and then you're there. But jokes aside, this question is a difficult one, and a vital one as we understand our place in American civic society as Jewish individuals. Similarly, it asks us how our Jewish identities play into our responsibilities towards others within that same society, especially those whose freedom and dignity have historically been denied. Jewish tradition doesn't give us the option of detachment. We're commanded to remember what it means to be oppressed. We are told over and over again, "You shall not oppress the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." Our own liberation story is not a private affair, nor is it an exclusive membership to only which we are entitled. Now, I'll admit, this obligation is a difficult one to foster, as anti-Semitism continues to ravage American and international spaces. When generational trauma defines aspects of a community, we often lose the space and energy to fight for justice for others. When you're tending to your own wounds, it's hard to extend your hand. And yet, Jewish history has never afforded us the luxury of moral isolation. Our texts and our leaders remind us that pain doesn't exempt us from justice and advocacy. As Heschel said in his final interview, morally speaking, there is no limit to the concern one must feel for the suffering of human beings. Indifference to evil is worse than evil itself. Of course, this doesn't mean we ignore anti-Semitism or minimize our fear. It means we resist the false notion that argues that we must choose between protecting ourselves and fighting for others. Solidarity is not limited. Just as how we are Jewish and American, we stand against anti-Semitism and racism. We fight for our own justice and the justice of others. This week's Parshat Shalach Lecha, tells the story of the 12 envoys sent to scout the Promised Land, 10 of whom returned with a fearful report that tampered with the morality of the Israelites and delayed their entry into the land. Their fear was great and internalized, stating that they looked like grasshoppers in their own eyes compared to the giants of the land that they feared they could not conquer. This fear-driven retreat from liberation echoes in the history of Juneteenth, when freedom, though legally declared, was delayed for over 2 years for enslaved people in Texas. Just as the Israelites stood at the edge of freedom but faltered, so too did America hesitate to fully confront the demands of emancipation. Juneteenth and Shalach Lecha both remind us that as Jews, we cannot let fear halt our ability to act. As Rebbe Nachman of Breslov so famously said, Kol ha'olam kulo, Gesher tsar ma'od, v'hayikar lo lefahad klal. The whole entire world is a very narrow bridge, and the main thing is to have no fear at all. And so, after all that, I want to return to the main question I brought up earlier and give you all my answer, but don't let it affect yours. Although it may still seem like a trivial difference between being a Jewish American or an American Jew, I like to think of myself as a Jewish American. Jewish being the primary descriptor of the two words, implies that it is what defines my quote-unquote Americanness. It means that the values I bring into my civic life, the lens through which I view justice, liberty, and my duties as a citizen are first and foremost shaped by my Jewish identity. It's not a matter of prioritizing one loyalty over another, but of letting my Judaism inform how I move through this country that, although flawed, is so beautiful and important. My heritage and tradition demands me to fight for justice for myself and the other, and it is what determines how I interact with my civic responsibilities. Not only do we, as Americans, have an overwhelming obligation to fight for liberty in this country in order to form a more perfect union, as stated in our Constitution's preamble, we as Jews must continue to fight for our Black peers. Justice is a Jewish value, and we may not wait for comfort, consensus, or convenience to pursue it. You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. Those words from the revolution will not be televised by Gil Scott-Heron, are a warning against complacency, and as Jews, we know what happens when the world looks away. We know what it means to need allies and find none. As Jews and as Americans, we will not stay home nor cop out. Justice delayed is justice denied, and so we mustn't wait to advocate. My blessing for you all is the strength to be in the face of a call to justice and respond, Hineni, here I am. Thank you.